All right. Hello, everyone. Today I am joined by our friend and senior member of the global malaria community, Dr. Prosper Chaki, who is the executive director of the Pan-African Mosquito Control Association, a senior research scientist at Ifakara Health Institute in Tanzania, and in general, a very experienced, really one of the primary leaders in the fight against malaria, both in Africa and globally. And Prosper, I'm so glad to be sitting down and talking with you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure is mine speaking with you, Gray, as well.
Wonderful. Well, Prosper, let's talk first about you. Where are you right this minute? And tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Well, as we speak, I'm in Dar es Salaam, stuck on traffic, but definitely found a comfortable spot for us to chat. So, yes, and I'm married, I have a family of 3 kids. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Prosper, you are a leader in the malaria community. I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of PAMCA's. For the audience who might not be so familiar with the story of malaria and where we stand today, would you share with us what your view of the malaria fight is today?
Well, I think it's for malaria as it stands, it's been an evolving effort over the years. Recalling back malaria situation in the 80s in my own country, where we witnessed a lot of people dying from the disease, a lot of children getting severe illness, um, up to late 90s and early 2000s, where we still had a lot of severe malaria and a number of people dying from the disease. But as of now, I think the efforts against malaria have highly advanced. We have very highly improved the tools from the bed nets, from IRS indoor residual spraying, and some partly larva source management in different places. Case management, I think we've seen a lot of development on drugs, anti-malarials, from quinine, the eras of quinine to chloroquine, then SP to artemether-lumefantrine, the combination therapies, ACTs as of now. The malaria landscape, malaria control landscape has really improved over the years, and I think this is credit to all the global efforts, the WHO, Global Fund, the countries, national programs, for all the united efforts getting this done to this level, where we see a lot of improvements in terms of a reduced number of deaths, reduced number of cases globally, but also within countries. In Tanzania, as of now, we're talking about roughly 7.3% of the people with parastemia. So these are it's a big improvement from around 40% in the early 2000s. So overall, I think this is very much improved, but we do also reckon that there are still emerging challenges. The reports of widespread resistance to insecticides, which is kind of blocking or hampering the impact of bed nets and IRS. There is, of course, dwindling investment in funds from different, so over dependence on external funding amongst African and malaria endemic countries. I think that is also partly blocking the development or the achievements that would otherwise have seen. So I think it's high time for the malaria community, for the public health community globally, to look at innovative ways of tackling the disease, innovative ways of fundraising locally, but also so just to supplement the gaps, because with the existing gaps, it's unlikely that we will be able to witness the elimination or eradication of the malaria parasites as soon as we would have wished to. So deliberate efforts are actually in high demand.
Yeah. Thank you. And that makes all of that makes sense. And following on that, you and I met last year in Kigali at the annual gathering of the Pan-African Mosquito Control Association. Can you talk a little bit about PAMCA's role or growing role and leadership in malaria efforts in Africa, and what do you see and where do you see that going?
Okay. So yes, definitely. I think that was the first time we met, and it was very beautiful interaction. And I really appreciate that. With PAMCA, so PAMCA has been since it was founded in 2009. Our mission is really to create a platform for a convening with all the public health practitioners, including public and private institutions, the public sectors, the industry, researchers, implementers, to share and exchange information, knowledge about malaria. So, and this is also driven by the fact that prior to PAMCA, the existing platforms were not really enabling the interactions amongst scientists and among public health practitioners. And hence we thought there is a big gap on to inform evidence-based decision making. You have a group of researchers that do a lot of beautiful and very useful information on research, but there is no platform where that information can be shared with other researchers or implementers for influencing policies and practice within the continent. And so with the coming of PAMCA, the vision is really to bring together and consolidate the partnerships amongst key stakeholders involved in not just on malaria, but on vector-borne disease control and elimination. And we started with the 2 chapters back in 2011, 13. As of now, as we speak, PAMCA is within 18 countries. So we have chapters across the continent. Majority of them, of course, they're still in sub-Saharan Africa, where malaria is endemic. But our membership, individual membership, but also corporate membership spans across the globe. So we have individual members that come from all across Africa, and we're now covering close to 35 countries in Africa. We have individual members coming from European countries, and we have US countries. But as of PAMCA, we also have partnerships with institutions. So we have memorandum of understanding with major regional bodies, but we do also have memorandum of understanding with renowned research institutions. And with these, what we are establishing is what we call the regional centers of excellency. And this is where we want to be leveraging the capacity existing in Africa to benefit Africa. So strengthening the South-South collaborations, but also at the same time still focusing on strengthening North-South collaborations, because this is the only way we realize that it's going to benefit the vector-borne disease elimination efforts in the continent by us creating a user-friendly, a more interactive platform where people and key stakeholders can easily interact, set up agenda, but also pursue the agenda that is set for. And in the past, it's very, very common to hear that African countries are not involved in agenda setting. And that, for us, it's the number one mission that we want to eliminate that gap. We want to have African countries, African researchers sit on the table at the global level, at regional level, but at the continental level, to set up the agenda for vector-borne disease elimination. And they also get involved in terms of implementing and executing those set agenda.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. And the regional centers of excellence, I think that's fantastic in part because as you mentioned, capacity building in the vector control space is so critical as we enter this next phase of the malaria fight. Can you talk a little bit about how PAMCA is positioning itself in relation to the introduction of innovative tools? And of course, you know that we're working on a particular innovation platform to fight malaria, but more broadly, lots of new innovations are coming through R&D pipelines and are beginning to, or are preparing to move into the field in the next couple of years. What role does PAMCA play? And personally, how do you see the role of innovative tools unfolding in Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. So as I said earlier on, so PAMCA is a membership organization, and in terms of innovations, our members are very actively playing a key role. Majority of our members are researchers, and they are involved in day-to-day designing of new ways to target vector and vector-borne diseases. So one is the reason why we have our annual conference is so that people can actually share the existing information. But we do also realize that that's not enough. So what we are at this stage, through our regional centers of excellence, we are establishing a collaborations for what we call the vector product translation process. So innovation translation. We have a lot of innovations that come from different countries and different partners. So at times they are not optimized. So with the collaborations that we're setting up through our regional centers of excellence, we're setting up multi-site, multi-country sites where vector control products in pipeline can easily and more quickly be evaluated and generate robust data where those can actually be upscaled into the industry. So, and we also have a partnership. We're setting up very strong ties with the industry. This is the reason why, because most of the research ends up in publications. And it's because it's mostly linked with either master's or PhD students. And most often there is no appetite for researchers to take up those. So we are working with the innovation hubs, but we're also keen to engage with the industry so that we create a platform, a complete ecosystem where an innovation, an idea that is generated, we have a prototype that can be taken up by the industry for further development and optimization. And we are also setting up these vector control product testing centers, again, within our regional centers of excellence, so that any promising tool, any promising prototype can easily be evaluated either through randomized control trials to just meet with the required standards the WHO that are setting up. But also, this particular platform is meant to facilitate a quick registration at regional level, because once a product is evaluated within a particular regional center of excellence, that means you are actually have evaluated within multiple sites within the region, including multiple countries. So let's say in Eastern Africa, you've got 5 countries that are covered. And so if you get a product quickly evaluated and registered in the 5 countries, that means the chances for adoption by the countries is high as well. And this is where we are getting ourselves in the place. So we know we cannot play all the roles. So what we're doing is bring every partner involved, from the researchers, individuals generating the ideas, but also the industry, our regional centers, but also the ministries of health, because for the full registration processes at country level, at regional level, requires compliance with the existing guidelines, but also the bylaws within countries and the region. And this is where we think we want to be facilitating, so that there's a fastest way of where innovation can make ways into influencing policy and practices within the territories where we work.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that is really promising to hear as a technology developer myself, or on behalf of Oxitec. Regional evaluations are really promising to us. I think that will indeed hopefully expedite the translation of science into impact, which is great. So let's put that in the context of the emerging threat, or the threat that is growing, and that is Anopheles stephensi. With your comments about the regional centers of excellence, about regional, testing and certification of technologies, how do you see the race for new solutions or new capacity in relation to the invasive and spreading Anopheles stephensi?
Yeah. So I think Anopheles stephensi is maybe that has come up the right time, where I think there's been a lot of loose ends that were not coming together. So now to see the global community, the malaria community, real coming together and discussing the inversion of Anopheles stephensi is really encouraging. And I've seen a lot of dynamics, the changes in terms of the thinking around existing efforts, but also what the other efforts can actually come. And I think what I like most is that different entities, from global to the local, they are all coming together, one, not just to look at the extent of where the vector is, but really looking at measures to contain the situation. And this is where I think a great value out of it. And most of it, people realize that there's quite some existing evidence that can be borrowed. For instance, we know Anopheles stephensi has been very much predominant, the vector in East Asia, India countries, and I've been in a meeting where colleagues from India, they have been sharing their experience with African countries, and that is for me very important. We've been to a meeting where I've seen colleagues from South America. They're also involved to share their experience on dengue control, Aedes control. So I think for me, there's quite a lot of information that is in existence. We just didn't have a common platform for sharing that. And Anopheles stephensi's inversion in Africa, it's kind of opening up that platform that, hey, let's wait a minute. There is this evidence that is here. Can we not optimize this? Can we not adapt to this and make it? And I know, like Oxitec, you've done some great work in Brazil, for instance, with the Aedes control. And I know you are currently have an ongoing study in the US. So for me, I think those kind of innovations, we need to think of how we can optimize those in the context of Africa. Yes, I've had some concerns that there might be possibilities that Anopheles stephensi is invading Africa. They may be adopting and evolving to something else, and maybe they may turn to be a more efficient vectors as opposed to the currently status quo, where the human blood indices are not very threatening. But but as a global community, definitely it's high time that we sit together and look at what are in the toolbox. What do we have that can actually make its way into the efforts to contain or eliminate the vectors? Because it's definitely spreading, and spreading very fast, to the extent at times we feel like is it spreading or it's just been there, but because we've not been looking, we didn't find it. Now, because everyone is looking at it, that's why we find it. So I think this is some of the very useful arguments and discussions that the Anopheles stephensi situation has opened up, and I feel like as a global partner, we have got the duty to kind of accelerate these discussions, country level, continental level, and globally, just to look at what are the key solutions that could be sustained within the continent. But as PAMCA, what we are always looking at is, for us, is not just looking at the tools and making them to the market, but empowering the communities, but also empowering the countries to be able to utilize these tools, the innovations that come into the market. Our main focus is developing sustainable community-based approaches. In actual fact, that if we've been to Djibouti, for instance, where we've been training the country, the program, but also setting up what we call the district entomology. The purpose is that even when PAMCA is not there, the country, the program, but also the community, they should be able to take on the efforts, and whatever tools come into, they will be familiar with them, and they just carry on the elimination efforts.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, and the positive outlook on the stephensi story is really unique, and I appreciate your optimism and the fact that this is an example or an opportunity for us to collaborate internationally and between two communities that typically have been very separate, and that is the global malaria community and the global NTD community. It's frustrating at how few linkages and forums we create for sharing of lessons learned and evidence, especially on these urban vectors. So I really appreciate that. Well, speaking of communities, and I think this World Malaria Day, there is a lot of discussion around gender and the fact that malaria is often and has an outsized burden on women. And on the other side of the story, there's quite a bit of discussion about the fact that women are often underrepresented in the innovation community or the entomology or vector control community. I know PAMCA has been doing a lot of thinking and work in this area, but what are some of your thoughts about the role of gender in the global fight against malaria?
Okay, so thank you. I think, as you said, at PAMCA we take it very serious, and we do just realize that when you look at the population structure numbers in Africa, for instance, where malaria is in them, you have more women at times, let's say 51% to 49%. So 51 will be female and 49 will be male. And in places you go to even 54% female women, and then versus the men. So in all you look at anyways you want, it's like majority of the population is women. But if you look at the composition, the constituents working on the malaria, on vector-borne disease elimination, majority of people working in these are men. And you have women in rural areas, for instance, that are not empowered to clearly deploy the key interventions, and yet they are the caretakers of the families. That is just one. So for us, we're saying if we really look at vector-borne diseases such as malaria as a war, and we want to wage a war and win the war, it doesn't make sense for us to have just part of the population be fully involved and part of the population not involved. It's not going to work. So if we neglect women, who, by the way, they are more effective at caring for the families, I think it's unlikely that we will be able to succeed to eliminate, to realize the elimination efforts. So one is, when we look at how women can actually play a role, there are two levels. For me, one is increasing the professional level, and this is where you create researchers, you train implementers. So we have a program, the mentorship program, the training programs, that is looking at how do we bring on board, how do we create a critical mass of women in professional positions as implementers, as researchers. And my colleagues at PAMCA, we have 4 women that are more actively involved, led by Dr. Damaris Matoke, and the other 3 regional coordinators. So we have 3 regional coordinators at the moment. We will soon have a 4th regional coordinator to occupy the 4 regional coordinator regions for Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, West Africa, and Central Africa. This particular program is mainly looking at training capacity, trainings, and mentorship, plus coaching. How do you to break the barriers that women encounter through their career progression? But our second effort, where we always invite partners, and particularly the industry, and I think this is also an open call to you, Gray, and Oxitec, is looking at how do we empower women, non-professional groups of women in rural areas, in subnational, at sub-district level, to be able to utilize vector control tools to care for their families and to care for their communities, but at the same time, generate income out of it. Mm-hmm. Because they are fully dedicated. They're spending most of the time, and they're doing quite a lot of income generating activities. Yet what we want to do is at PAMCA is we are creating this program that is looking at them, is training them on different ideas. One is basic understanding of vector control tools and how they function, how they can use them. It can be IRS, it can be BedNet, it can be larval source management, it can be some environmental management. But as soon as they have that information, and we work with the industry to make sure that they can do the service to their communities, but in return, those services will be bought by the communities, and they have income generating activities. So I think that's one way where we're looking at how do we empower communities, particularly women who are key caretakers of the families, to do a more proper analysis. Yeah, so that is what as PAMCA we are doing. So in terms of creating the critical mass, we do also have programs that is looking at secondary school children, high school children, and university children. More of a STEM approach, but looking at how do we encourage them, how do we motivate them to take up vector-borne disease-related training, and we facilitate through our various partner institutions and regional centers of excellence to facilitate these type of trainings. And through our the district entomology trainings, they are also taking part in terms of more practical trainings to acquire soft skills that will allow the young generation, but also the women in general, to be able to undertake and deploy these vector-borne disease interventions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you, and thanks to PAMCA for focusing on these issues. Prosper, shifting gears briefly, and then I'll let you get back into the Dar es Salaam traffic, hopefully towards home, is your story. You and I apparently were at the University of Dar es Salaam at the same time for some time. And tell us, why did you enter this field?
Wow, it's a long story. One of it is so I was born maybe 7 decades. Is it 8 decades ago? Now I'm 47 now. So born in the 70s, when malaria control efforts were not well defined, well developed. I've witnessed quite a lot, and my hometown is Ifakara.
Mm.
But by that time, so I was born and bred in Ifakara, where the Ifakara Health Institute was established. Um, at that time, so the name Ifakara is coined from the Valley of Death, because it's a plateau where you have the river and used to flood a lot. So the malaria cases, the number of deaths is used to be quite a lot. So I did witness quite a lot of sufferings of the community that I was in, including my own family. I did, so I have my young brother who is sickle cell, but I did lose one of my young brother from the disease. But what also motivated me is when I was growing up and I started primary school education in Ifakara, I met with a lot of researchers. Majority of them came from Europe at that time, medical entomologists, the likes of Charlwood, Jerry Killeen, Taken, and many, many others who were visiting Ifakara, conducting their research. And they would always come to our neighborhood in the evening where they do the swarming, they collecting mosquitoes. So, and it got my interest. And I do remember me saying that when I grow up, I want to work with the team at Ifakara.
Mm.
And by that time, it wasn't called. So in my hometown, it's not known as for Ifakara Health Institute. It's known as STIFL. STIFL means Swiss Tropical Field Laboratory. So because it used to be affiliated with the Swiss TPH. So that is one of the stories that really motivated me. So and I'd kept that with me all the time up to the university. And I do remember even when I got to the university, I said, I'm not going to apply for any job, but I want to go for work for Ifakara. And I didn't know anyone at Ifakara by that time. But I was one of my lecturers at the universities. So he really knew that I was had I was passionate about research, and he linked me with some researchers at Ifakara, Jerry Killeen. That's how I got pulled into the malaria world, and so I started as a volunteer on mosquito collections in urban Dar es Salaam, and then slowly I was coordinating the larval source management program here in Dar es Salaam with the city council, and it was that is what opened up me to the malaria world, because I got to learn a lot from the people that I was interacting with, but with most of it, I think, from the communities. Um, and my passion of working with the communities, I think it's deep because of the history, but also the period that I was involved volunteering, because I'd spent a lot of time in rural areas, deep the Maasai land across the country. So all within the very, very remote areas of the country. But it just opened up my brain to really understand the true challenges that the countries and the people are facing, and so I developed this passion that to be part of solution provide a solution to these challenges. And I think that is my journey, and why I got into the field.
Okay, that's a wonderful story. I didn't realize you were from there, from Ifakara.
Yes.
Then maybe final question for you, Prosper. Do you have any advice or tips for young professionals in our field? And yeah, any tips, any advice?
Well, for me, I think for young fellows wishing and to join the field, this is a very interesting field. One of it. It's not so much money, but there is a lot of value because we are saving. You see the outcome. You're saving the lives of people dying from these deadly diseases that can be prevented. It can be controlled. It can be contained. So I think what I would urge them is to be driven by the passion and the urgency to save lives rather than becoming rich. I see a lot of people when we are recruiting, the first question people have is how much money are you making? I don't think it should be the case, because if I was to talk about my initial days, my early days, it was really not encouraging, and because even when I joined Ifakara, I was working with another organization, and I always tell my colleagues that no, I gave up my salary from that organization, which was 3 times higher than what I got to earn at Ifakara. But I think what drove me is that interest to be part of solution development, to be able to save more lives, at least to leave a legacy where you have your contribution to what is happening in the vector-borne malaria landscape as well. So we've been part of that, and I'm happy when the numbers keep dropping year after year, because I think that is what we are meant to do until we realize the elimination effort across the globe.
Yeah, that's well said. So young professionals should be looking for the satisfaction of having impact and contributing rather than the highest pay in the area. So I think that's a wonderful message, and that certainly is the case around the world. Well, Prosper, I really appreciate our new friendship. I hope to see you in the very near future. So I wish you a wonderful evening. Thanks for spending time with us, and thank you for all of your leadership, for PAMCA's leadership. You're part technical leader, but you also are a diplomat, and I think you've done a wonderful job of bringing communities together around this important subject, and I'm very thankful for that. So I wish you a safe drive home through Dar es Salaam traffic, and I hope you have a very good weekend.
Thank you very much, Gray. I appreciate that, and mostly welcoming you to Addis this year.
Yes.
For the annual conference.
I look forward to, yes. We'll have some Anjara together and some very good discussion, good time in Addis. Yeah, that's right. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
Okay, Prosper. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.